I want to kick it off with one of my favorite all-time games, and probably one of the industry's most important games, Wolfenstein 3D.
Yeah, Wolfenstein kind of changed history forever. Wolfenstein changed our expectations of what a computer could do. Before this, computer games were mostly strategy games. They were kind of clunky and choppy, powerful and sophisticated, but we'd never seen anything like this. And then it comes along, and they program the sucker, and boom, you are flying in 3D space on a computer with no dedicated 3D hardware. Yeah. And it's such a convincing illusion. It's so colorful. It's beautiful. You're in these vast areas. You're exploring in the dark, going from place to place. You're fighting freaking Nazis, gunning away. There's blood flying everywhere. Did you guys play a lot of Wolfenstein?
I did.
I've seen gameplay.
Yeah, I didn't play a ton of Wolfenstein. I was more of a Doom kid.
Oh, you were a Doom kid. Now, Doom comes along. Wolfenstein definitely contributed to the success of Doom. I think some of that success came from the shareware model that Wolfenstein really helped popularize.
Yeah, I mean, it was essentially the early 90s version of a game demo. They released a couple of levels for free and just distributed them, let you copy them. They encouraged you to copy them and share them with your friends. And the idea was, if you like those first few levels, you'll pay full price for the whole deal.
Right, and this is on floppy disks. I mean, there's no...
Yeah. Do you remember how many disks it shipped on?
Actually, the original Wolfenstein you could get on one shareware disk, which is just pretty incredible. Yeah, that's. I mean, they're very efficient coders. We've learned that over the years. And in addition to making the PC do things it was never meant to do, they created a game that could have a significant chunk. I think it was 10 levels, easily distributed on a disk. That was 9 levels, and they went ahead and put an entire huge hidden stage in the demo while they were at it, just because that was cool. Yeah. And so they give this thing away, and yeah, you would share this out with your friends, and then you actually had to either call a telephone number that was on the disc or in the game, or you had to write and put like a check in an envelope and mail it off and wait for weeks, and Wolfenstein would come back. But it was so compelling that enough people did that it were able to go on and break out and do Doom.
Yeah.
And that's pretty fantastic. What about what about the original Castle Wolfenstein? Steve, did you ever play that?
I did play that, but Wolfenstein 3D was where it came alive for me. I mean, like you were saying, like the smoothness of it, like it felt so seamless. Just everything in that game just worked and fit together so well, and they weren't at all shy about like the Nazi stuff. Like everything was super bloody, and there's Mecha Hitler, and there's iron crosses and swastikas everywhere, and just like, we don't care, this is what you want to play. And like, I feel like I have killed probably more Nazis as a gamer than were killed in the entire real world.
Undoubtedly. Undoubtedly.
And it all began there for me.
Yeah, well, they carried that out. Steven Spielberg has used Nazis in how many movies? Because they're easy enemies to easy enemies to hate. Everybody hates Nazis, and you just blast away with a submachine gun, and they would explode in blood and gore. And this is a year that's kind of associated with blood and gore in gaming. Yeah. And even though there were more visceral, experiences with ripping out bodily organs and something like Mortal Kombat that year, I think that in a way, Wolfenstein was actually more intense because you were seeing out of your own eyes, and you hadn't done that much in games before. There had been choppy attempts at 3D, but nothing like this. Wolfenstein didn't just surpass PC expectations, it also was one of the very first computer games to be as fast or faster than what you play on a console. And again, it was a non-linear experience. You were going back and forth, you were exploring and finding. That goes back to the original Wolfenstein game, which was actually an old Apple game. And in that game, you had kind of a fog of war effect. It was an arcade action exploratory game, and they wanted to recreate that in 3 dimensions. The guys, Carmack and Romero, had grown up playing this thing, and they loved it. And they actually got the blessing of the dude that made Wolfenstein. After they finished it, they showed it to him. They didn't ask before, but afterward, they were so proud. They're like, "Look what we did with your idea!" And they ran into it.
Bold move.
And he loved it. He was so positive, so supportive to them. But Wolfenstein, even though it wasn't played by nearly as many people as Doom, it laid the seeds for the success that Doom would have. They pioneered a lot of the technology in it.
Well, I think there's like a lot of iconic imagery that comes from Wolfenstein. Not only like a lot of the Nazi symbology that's there in the game, but also like you mentioned Mecha Hitler, and that's one of the most video gamey images that you can possibly like. That ridiculous Hitler face in that mech is something that like. I don't know. I feel like it's almost synonymous with Wolfenstein.
No, well, if you think about there's health kits, there's secret doors, there's the character's bloody portrait as he gets damaged. There's so many things that are
going from room to room. I mean, it's iconic of so many games that followed afterwards.
Yeah, backtracking.
GoldenEye.
Backtracking.
Exactly, it laid that pattern for you. Also stabbing German shepherds in the face, very important. But this is, there is a lot of backtracking exploring. They gave you incentives to explore. You had weapon upgrades hidden behind walls. You had, like I said, entire hidden areas of the game that you didn't have to see at all, but you could. They just threw this kind of bonus content in because they wanted you to explore, and the exploring was fun. You know, a year later we would get Myst, and Myst would be about exploring in a very different way and a slow, methodical.
There's no Mecha Hitler.
Yeah,
yeah, and I can't think of like two polar opposite ways to explore a game. Like,
right.
Yeah, this game incentivized exploring by making it fast, fun, exciting, dangerous. It was very easy to die in Wolfenstein. It's a hard game. And one of the things I really enjoy about it is that it didn't pull any punches in challenge, in carnage, and it was delightfully immature. I think it was Carmack who eventually said that your average video game needs about as much plot as your average porno. I think Wolfenstein really embodies that design philosophy. And it went on to spawn the first-person shooter genre. Yeah. And for that matter, it also deeply influenced, you know, along with things like Ultima Underworld, what we would eventually get out of the RPGs we play today. A lot of the first-person RPG games have become much more like shooters than they were like the early first-person RPGs. We expect that kind of immersive smoothness. It's also a colorful game, and man, that sound engineering too. Every time you come around the corner, supported your sound card, gave you a reason to have speakers plugged into your PC, and you got guys screaming at you in German. Exactly, you remember that?
The SS guard screaming "Mein Leben" is one of the most iconic cues from a game that I remember. But you also heard Hitler like walking. Like there was one of those games where you could hide and you heard footsteps of characters, and like that was relevant.
As a matter of fact, you kind of had to hide if you were going to beat him. I mean, you couldn't just stand toe to toe. You were done for. I mean, it's a freaking giant robotic Hitler. When you face giant robotic Hitler, you hide first and shoot from behind.
Have you played the game recently?
Wolfenstein? Yeah, actually, I go back to it every now and then. You can still get the sucker running.
That's awesome.
It's a game that I...
How does it hold up? I'm curious.
Oh, it's still fun. Again, you don't have to worry about a vertical axis. Sure. And when you don't have to do that, you can really focus your attention on kind of the slide and glide shooting, and they did that really well. Circle strafing makes it easier because we hadn't figured that out back then, and now it's easier to do that. But honestly, I have as much fun playing that as I did Advanced Warfare.